Greetings, everyone. I'll be back on camera very soon. Just give me some more time. My question to you today is, what will history say about 2020 and 2021? Who will be the heroes and who will be the villain? Because you can bet your bottom dollar that history will speak of this period favorably. And of course, there will be individuals who will emerge as villains. If you feel comfortable, leave me a comment in the comment section and express your opinion on this question. Now, to be honest with you, for the first time in years, I can tell you that I am afraid to speak. And it's killing me inside because that's not who I am. I just speak and, you know, move along. But today I feel pain in my heart. I'm literally in pain when I think about what I see. And I'm going to say this: African people were kept in bondage for over 500 years. And I have spent many years trying to find out how that was possible. And as things unfold right now, I see it. It wasn't just about racism, it was about the human spirit. It was about individuals figuring out how to use fear and greed to control a people. Now, when we think about 2021 and 2020 thus far, you realize it's not just about race, it's about humanity. There is a race to control humanity. And people are afraid to speak because of my precious. And when you have suffered and you've gone through a lot of things in life, you start to say, I have to pick my battles. And so I've been trying to stay narrow. But God, or the Creator, as some of you say, is not pleased with me. For every person who remains silent as we watch terrible things happening in the world, we are part of it. And I'm going to say that there are billions of people on this earth. And those who are in positions of leadership are just a mere fraction of that. And at some point, the people need to exercise their voice so that there is not tyranny, despotism, and the term despot, sorry, is often used in countries like communist countries, socialist countries, not democratic countries. You see a place like Jamaica, if someone says something or ask a question or even say no, the action is swift. And so people are afraid of being incarcerated. People are afraid of dying, not because of what is happening in the world. And I don't deny that there's something happening in the world. And I don't deny that people are actually dying. But there are things that I see and I have to question. I read an article that 5 people were arrested for traveling in the same vehicle during a lockdown. And I thought to myself, these 5 persons can go to a supermarket with 500 other people and they wouldn't be committing a crime. Now, the ones who lock them up is saying, I'm trying to protect you. So I want to ask the question, who's protecting the cashier at that supermarket? For you letting 5 people at a time, and for the day, these individuals have to deal with 1,000. Or these individuals, these 5 persons are going to work, and 500 more. These 5 persons are on a bus, and 50 more. Now we hear that all these methods are put in place to save us, to protect us. And I'm thinking to myself, what about the person who's waiting for that life-saving surgery that is being canceled? And it hasn't occurred to these ones who are making these decisions that there are people who will take their chances. They'll say to themselves, okay, I don't want this measure, or I don't want this thing that you want to introduce to my body. Because there is still that choice. You see, none of the legislation that shows our rights, equal rights, and justice is abundant in this time. No one went to the law and changed these things. So we still have these freedoms and these rights. But all of a sudden, these things are taken by force. No one is saying anything because we are afraid. When did we get to be in a society that often look at other persons and say, you are violating you people's human rights? The ones who are most critical are doing the same thing. So go back to the question. Slavery, the enslavement of African people, is seen as one of the most devilish things. And we would hear that people say, that was an awful time. Let's move forward. Let's not talk about that anymore. For years, when I would express my feelings about racism and my experience with it, I would have people come to me and say, forget it. That was a long time ago. It's not now. So then how is it possible that people are feeling that they're being targeted? Communities are feeling that they're being targeted with things that they don't understand or they can't seem to put together. Something started in China, okay, and landed all around the world. This is what we're told. Okay. Now, there was a period when people were talking about transphobia. That was a thing. People were so uptight and so concerned about Black Lives Matter that you would see people in the street marching to protect the interests of African people. The story was coming out that, let's give them a platform to speak, first of all, which was very derogatory, very disrespectful, and so fake. And yet people feel like they're being herded up around the islands, herded up around the world. Oh my goodness. And we're afraid to speak because we fear mankind and not the Creator. My God is ashamed of me. Ashamed. In the last 3 weeks or so, there has been silence because I have a message and I sit on that message because I'm afraid, because I'm thinking, oh, what's going to happen to me if I speak? Because we know, you already know that when you do, you know what's going to happen to you. as to come from that point where you're feeling a little bit comfortable and face this uncertainty. You want to hold back. Now we already know that you have to use wisdom, and you can't just blab and just open your mouth and say as you like. But there comes a time when somebody has to say, who do I fear? Do I fear man or do I fear God? Do I fear the Creator? Now, when I say God, I'm not saying Jesus, okay? And I don't want to offend any of you. I try to be respectful of people's religion, but I'm not saying Jesus. If you're saying Jesus, blessings to you, because I'm not saying Jesus. Because you see, when the African people were saying Jesus over the 500 years of slavery, Jesus never came to rescue them. Again, I don't want to offend you. I don't want to insult you. I'm just speaking my mind, okay? And so if this video is not for you, just roll back. But I'm just trying to say, we can't continue to sit down and wait for Jesus to come and rescue us as Black people. We cannot do that. We have to find a deeper spiritual connection. One that you say to yourself, I will not fear death. Though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I'm not going to fear it. And understand or that we have an inalienable right as human beings, that no one has that right to determine what is right for you or me. It's an individual thing. There are folks we give authority to lead. We give them permission. And when they're leading the way we ask them to lead, we say, okay, now you deserve the position. But when you're not, when your leadership, infringe on my right as a human being, then it's time for you to go. We have given men this totalitarian kind of authority over our lives. And we say we're afraid. They're relying on your fear. Someone called me on my phone and I answered, and she says, I'm concerned about whatever. And she says, do you live at this address? And I said to her, no, I don't. She was concerned about me based on where I was living. Well, anyway, I wanted to continue the conversation, and she says, no, we're targeting a particular community. It's hard for me to hear that and just walk away and say, okay, it is what it is. It is what I'm hearing or seeing in front of me. It forces me to think that this is bigger and greater than what we're told. And I don't even care about that right now. I don't. I'm just asking questions in this video. I'm saying, if you care about saving lives, why would you cancel surgery for people who need that? If they don't get that surgery, they will die. If you care about, freedom, why would you release criminals and incarcerate innocent people? There's some things happening in Jamaica and I don't quite get it. I have not made the connection yet. I have just put dots trying to make those connections about people who are accused of criminal activities and released, even though they were sentenced to 30 years, they're released in a society now where it's pure chaos. And the other persons in prison with circumstantial evidence. What is the aim? Why release these criminals or alleged criminals? I'm not going to say alleged because they were tried and sentenced. What is the intention of releasing someone from prison that was once seen as most wanted? I'm talking about a lot of things in this video. One of the reasons why they were able to keep African people in bondage is because we had no courage. Okay, I understand the fear thing, but we didn't have the courage to say no more. Those who found that courage got freedom. So I hear that all these companies are going to create outposts to carry out certain acts. And there doesn't seem to be any choice. That is my problem. I have no problem with the aim and the intention of these ones. I have a problem when someone says 5 years ago, there is a way to depopulate the earth using this method. And then that person spearheads the movement. It's difficult for me to accept that. It's difficult to see another human being with blood coursing through his veins decide what goes in my body. Me, a person who can't barely eat food for sustenance without that being a struggle. Someone who does not know me can stay wherever and decide for me. And I, out of fear and weakness, would surrender myself to that. And all the explanation given for what's been put in place to protect me does not make any sense. And what we got now is people turning against each other because of a few persons' idea. We want to make this one our enemy and that group our enemy. And at the end of the day, we fail to understand that when you're a citizen doing your job, yeah, you're asked to do what you're asked to do. So was the people in Germany, those police officers or those soldiers or whatever that were incarcerated even in their 90s. They were doing what the government asked them to do. In apartheid, when our African people were stopped on the road, they were doing what they were asked to do. They didn't just pick it up on themselves. Of course, there's always going to be individuals who have their own personal agenda, and so they'll feed on what is asked of them. But I'm imploring these governments around the world to stop, because a lot of what you're saying does not make sense. It doesn't make sense. And the longer you draw this thing out, the more you make mistakes. The more you're saying things that does not add up, that does not make sense. 1 minute in the beginning, don't cover your face. Then you're told to cover your face. Then you're told, don't wear this one because it's going to make you sick. Then you're told, oh, we are confused. Then you say this thing can't be caught this way. You have to touch your face. And then we hear that it's airborne. And then we're hearing all these stories. And people are losing their mind. Mental health, problems are increasing. What about that person who was lonely but had health issues that used to be able to go for a walk and that would help them? What about persons who have mental health problems, who just going for a walk would just make them feel better? Just sitting on a wall and watching people go by was something that gave them comfort. You take all of that. What about that woman and man that was married for 50, 55 years and lived together and built together so that in their old age they can enjoy their retirement, and they're now separated from each other because one is in the hospital sick and the other one can't go there to visit? And the mom and dad that work hard, tirelessly for their children, and the kids cannot visit them. And the child in the hospital who can't get visit from their loved ones because God is not pleased with us. But the thing is, we're looking for the God outside of ourselves. We're looking for this cloud to open, and out comes this angel to rescue us. And it's not going to happen. Black people were waiting for that for over 500 years. It never happened. Freedom came when they said no. They lost fear. Freedom came when they said, I am willing to die than live in bondage. My question is, when did anybody regard African people to the point where you wanted to help us? Where's the factories? Where's the business? Where is the opportunities in many of these African spaces? Where are these things available to us? Because you can't just want to put something in us and not just try to bring out the best in us. Why did the young man die in, is it Minneapolis or is it Minnesota? I think it's Minneapolis. The young man died, and I'm going to say that every time there needs to be a distraction, a black man dies or a black woman dies. You know, are the prison population falling? Because I think every time a black person is killed is because you want to fill these positions that are in the prison. You need more bodies because it's a business. So when I hear all these stories about Black Lives Matter and all these people coming out every so often to make it seem like you care, you don't care. Because this thing started in China, and now what I'm seeing is, oh, I'm sorry. The woman predicted that African communities and the Aboriginal communities should have been the ones to be found and protected. So 5 years ago, how could someone predict that? How? And if you have the ability to predict this thing, why would you not predict that our communities have suffered enough, more than any other community, and could benefit from some upliftment? And there's this mad race to find the cure to save us. From what? To save us from what? When have you ever cared about African people? When? Invite me to a conference, because I'm not trying to be disrespectful in this. Invite me and tell me at what point in history did you ever demonstrate any care for African people anywhere in the world? All we know is oppression. Hundreds and hundreds of years of it. Not just from slavery, but the civil rights movement and all the other things in apartheid. When? Who are you kidding? Why are you putting this out here? And now it's not just my community. And this is where God is displeased with me. Because as I see the dots, it becomes clearer and clearer. And I'm afraid to say it. Why am I afraid? I'm afraid, people see it and they know it. And maybe they're smart. And so I'm still praying about it. It breaks my heart. I wanted to believe that we were living in a world where people were opposed to certain things, where individuals were better, where the things of the past were going to stay in the past. But from what I'm seeing, it's always going to be repeated in every generation. And as the poem says, this is how it's done. Fear is that equalizing force. And human being, I used to say you're cowards, but truthfully speaking, it takes a very strong person, a very powerful person, a person who's connected spiritually, a one who is not afraid to relinquish this physical body. There are people who have passed away last year and this year. And truthfully speaking, this is going to sound terrible to say, but it's not a bad thing. Because it's better that you don't live than appear to live. And this tyranny is going to end when people say, no, no more, it's enough. Whatever your intention or your purpose or whatever it is you wanted to do for humanity, as long as you're doing that with people who agree, not forced. Forced labor was not a good thing. Forcing people to stay in any position that breaks their heart or their spirit or their mind, it's not a good thing. It really isn't. It's a sad day. In all the things we have achieved, you have rolled back our progress over 1,000 years. All the positive steps that we have taken has been cancelled. I'm going to end it here. Stay blessed, everybody.